The morning sun filtered to the grand windows of the courtroom, casting long, golden rectangles across the polished mahogany benches. There was a quiet dignity in the air, the kind that only exists in places where the truth is meticulously sought. This was a hall of Judy Justice, a sanctuary for those seeking resolution to the tangled threads of their lives. The atmosphere was one of solemnity tempered by a strange, quiet hope. Every person present had a story, a history of hard work, mistakes, and a human desire to be heard. The bailiff stood tall and steady, his voice resonating with a clear authority that filled every corner of the chamber. "Court, come to order," he announced, his eyes scanning the room. "All rise." As the honorable judge stepped toward the bench, her presence commanded immediate and total respect. She was the anchor in the storm of human conflict. "Have a seat, please," she said, her voice calm yet firm, as she looked down at the documents before her. The first matter of the day was case number 3044, involving Mr. Raphael Bannon and Mr. Eric Myers. This was not merely a dispute over money. It was a story about an employer and an employee, about a helping hand that had somehow turned into a clenched fist. Mr. Bannon, a man who had built his life on the solid foundation of a drywall business, stood on one side. His hands bore the subtle marks of 30 years of manual labor, 30 years of North Star Drywall. "Mr. Bannon," the judge began, "you have a drywall business?" "Yes, North Star Drywall," Raphael replied, his voice carrying pride of 3 decades of persistence. "I have been in business 30 years. The judge noted that the defendant, Eric Myers, had worked for Raphael for a period of time. The core of the claim was a pickup truck, a vehicle that had once been a symbol of mobility and a fresh start for a man who had very little. Raphael claimed he had sold the truck to Eric, but that the payment remained unfinished. Eric, however, stood on the other side with a look of quiet defiance. "Mr. Myers says that he paid you $800 for the truck," the judge observed, summarizing the defense. "He says it was never a fixed price, and that shortly after he took possession of it, the truck died. It was no longer drivable." "What did you do, junk it?" "We did not junk it," Eric answered quickly, "but it is out on her property at the moment. Not in my possession, but yes, we still have it." The judge turned her focus to Eric, seeking the beginning of the story. "When did you start to work for the plaintiff?" "I believe it was around June or July of 2022, Eric replied. At that time, the judge noted, Eric was homeless. It was a detail that added a layer of profound humanity to the case. Raphael had not just been an employer. He had been a provider of shelter. Eric and his then-girlfriend had moved onto Raphael's property with his permission, living in a large ice shed. An ice shed? The judge asked, the curiosity in her voice mirroring the unique nature of the arrangement. Yes, Eric confirmed. They had stayed in the ice shed, a sturdy structure meant for the freezing winters of Wisconsin, while they tried to get back on their feet. Eric's girlfriend had owned a car when they met, but an accident had left them without a vehicle. It was then that a deal was struck for the truck, a vehicle that had been sitting on the property and used, serving as a storage facility for Raphael. The truck was not running at the time, but Eric was determined. He spent about $100 of his own money just to get the engine to breathe again. The agreement was made in person, man to man, under the wide Wisconsin sky. However, when the judge asked for the written contract, the foundation of the legal claim began to show cracks. Raphael produced a paper, but it lacked the most vital element of any agreement. This is not a contract. The judge said, looking at the unsigned document, he did not sign this. He refused to sign it, Raphael admitted. It was sitting on the office table. Then it is not a contract, sir, the judge stated clearly. They did not sign it for a reason. The judge asked about the origin of the truck. Raphael had purchased it 7 years earlier from a private party in Georgia. It was a rust-free vehicle, a rarity in the North. He believed the truck was worth $2,200. Eric, however, insisted that there was no original purchase price. He believed the plan was to fix the truck and figure out a price later. How much was the truck, Mr. Myers? The judge asked, her eyes sharp. You say you paid $800 overtime. You do not look like a stupid man. You would not pay $800 if you did not know the total purchase price. Eric looked away, his eyes darting toward the gallery and then back to the floor. The judge noticed every movement. See how you were looking over here? Now you are looking over there. You tell me how much you believe the total purchase price was. There was no original purchase price, Eric maintained. He argued that Raphael took money out of his paychecks over 2 months. Raphael, on the other hand, insisted he had only ever received one payment of $100 before Eric quit. To find the truth, the judge turned to Sarah, her assistant, to determine the market value of the vehicle. Based on the condition and the 250,000 miles on the odometer, the trade-in value was between $212 and $1,000, while a private party sale could range from $1,100 to $2,500. Raphael tried to present a calendar as evidence of the hours Eric had worked and the payments made. But as the judge examined the document, her experience as a jurist told her something was wrong. This calendar was prepared recently, she observed. It is all in the same handwriting with the same pen, written across different months. You can only introduce a document if the notations were made contemporaneously with the event. This is hearsay and inadmissible. The case then shifted to another part of the complaint, a handgun and a leather holster. Raphael claimed the gun was in the truck and had gone missing. He believed Eric was the only one with access, but Eric denied even knowing where the gun was stored. Matthew, Raphael's foreman of 15 years, was called to the stand. Matthew was a man of few words, a steady worker who had seen many employees come and go. He recalled shooting the gun with Eric, but he had left before the shooting was finished. The guns, he said, had been left in the garage where they sat for days, accessible to others. In the end, the judge had to weigh the reality of the situation. Eric had taken possession of a vehicle that had value. He had used it to get his life back on track, even if the truck eventually failed. On the other hand, Raphael had failed to secure a signed contract or maintain proper records. I do not believe you had a fixed price of $2,200, the judge concluded, looking at Raphael. But I certainly believe that Eric owes you money for the truck. Judgment for the plaintiff in the amount of $800. As the gavel came down, case 3044 was closed. Raphael felt a sense of disappointment, realizing that 30 years of business should have taught him to get everything in writing. Eric felt the weight of the $800, but he also felt the relief of a resolved conflict. But the day was far from over. The courtroom doors opened again for case 3047, Blake versus Brzezinski. This was a different kind of dispute, one involving property damage and a legal battle over a renovation. Edwin Blake was a landlord, a man of order and responsibility who managed 5 rental units, including a condominium in Florida. One of his houses in Wisconsin had been occupied by the same tenant for 10 years. She was a reasonable, reliable person, and Edwin had never had a moment of trouble with her. The defendant was Kyle Brzezinski, the tenant's cousin and a construction business owner. The conflict began when Kyle performed renovations on the bathroom of Edwin's rental house without Edwin's authority. When Edwin refused to pay for work he never authorized, Kyle placed a lien on the property for $10,000. Mr. Brzezinski, the judge said, looking at the young contractor, when, for the first time, did you meet Mr. Blake? I have never met Mr. Blake. Kyle admitted this is the first time. The judge leaned forward, her expression one of disbelief. So any conversations you had were not with the owner? Everything was through Mike Bennon, Kyle explained. Mike was the tenant's boyfriend and, according to Kyle, had acted as the intermediary. The judge sighed. Mr. Brzezinski, you have been in construction business for 2 to 3 years. You have a company called K & K Pristine Exteriors. Sarah looked up the business and found a page that described the company's origins as a hobby based on a mother's vegetable garden. It did not speak of a professional, licensed contractor capable of unauthorized $10,000 renovations. Kyle argued that Mike had told him the work was authorized. He had even been told to take a toilet from another one of Edwin's units. He started the remodel in December, believing he had the green light. You cannot do that, the judge said firmly. You cannot do work for someone and then say, now I want to get paid, when you have never even spoken to the owner. You knew she was a renter. You should have had a contract with the owner of the house. To make matters worse, Kyle had not pulled any permits for the bathroom renovation. In the state of Wisconsin, such work requires official oversight to ensure safety and quality. Kyle had bypassed the law and then tried to use the law to freeze Edwin's property with a lien. This is a very easy case. The judge declared, "I am sending an order to the Department of Agriculture, Trade, and Consumer Protection. It is going to be a strong order. You had no permission to do this work, and you filed a fraudulent lien." The judge ordered the lien to be removed immediately. If Kyle wanted his money, he would have to seek it from the people who actually asked him to do the work, his cousin and her boyfriend. Judgment for the plaintiff. The judge said, her voice echoing the finality of the decision. "We are finished. The lien will be removed." Edwin Blake walked out of the courtroom with a sense of immense relief. He had been a fair landlord for many years, and today, the system had protected him from a scam. Kyle Brzezinski left with a hard lesson about the necessity of professionalism and the danger of making assumptions in business. As the courtroom emptied, the spirit of justice remained. It was a place where common sense prevailed, where the complexities of human relationships were stripped away to reveal the simple truth. Whether it was a truck from Georgia or a bathroom in Wisconsin, the message was clear. Integrity, honesty, and clear communication are the only paths to a truly peaceful resolution. The sun set slowly behind the courthouse, painting the sky in shades of deep orange and soft violet. The day had been long, but for those who had stood before the bench, it was a day of clarity. They walked back into the world, perhaps a little wiser, carrying with them the enduring value of being fair to one another in the grand journey of life. Justice had been served, and the scales were once again in balance.